Welcome to this Soundscape Books recording. Ready for your next literary adventure? Let's begin.
The Surgeon's Bargain, Chapter 1. A Glimmer of Hope. The rain, a ceaseless whisper against her window pane, had been Emma Johnson's constant companion since she'd arrived in Seattle. It mirrored the quiet drip of her ambition, a steady, unyielding pressure beneath the surface of her new, undeniably modest life. Tonight, the apartment's single lamp cast a circle of defiant warmth over her cluttered kitchen table, illuminating dog-eared medical textbooks and scribbled notes. Anatomy, physiology, organic chemistry. They were her escape, her future, her desperate gamble against a past that had left her with little more than a bruised heart and a stack of legal papers. Months had passed since the divorce had shredded her carefully constructed world. Mark, her husband of 7 years, had not been cruel, merely absent, until his absence became too loud to ignore. The financial fallout had been swift and brutal, stripping her of the comfortable suburban stability she'd once taken for granted. Now, Emma navigated the labyrinthine streets of Seattle, a city of tech giants and misty forests, on a bus pass and a shoestring budget. Her current job, an administrative assistant position at a legal firm, paid just enough to cover rent on her studio apartment and keep the dream of medical school from outright suffocating. Every evening, after long hours staring at spreadsheets, she traded them for the intricate diagrams of the human body, fueled by cheap coffee and an unwavering, almost pathological resolve. The next morning, the ubiquitous Seattle gray had given way to a watery sun, a deceptive glimmer that felt both hopeful and precarious. Emma, clad in her volunteer scrubs, navigated the bustling corridors of the Westside Convention Center. The annual Pacific Northwest Medical Innovations Conference was in full swing, and the air hummed with intellectual energy, the crisp scent of antiseptic mingling with expensive coffee. This was her world, or at least the periphery of it. She clutched a precarious stack of brochures and a dangerously full coffee cup, her focus split between avoiding collisions and mentally reviewing the Krebs cycle. It was inevitable, then, that she'd round the corner of a crowded exhibit. The space was a blur of polished shoes and hushed conversations, and Emma, inevitably, collided. The coffee, hot and dark, arced through the air before splattering across the pristine white lab coat of the man in front of her. "Oh my God, I am so sorry," Emma stammered, her heart lurching with immediate mortification. He turned slowly. He was a figure of such formidable composure that the dark stain on his chest seemed an impossible affront. Dr. Ethan Gray. The name, whispered with reverence throughout the medical community, was a legend. Renowned cardiac surgeon, philanthropist, a titan of the field whose face graced the covers of prestigious journals. He was taller than Emma expected, with eyes the color of glacier ice, startling against his immaculate features. His dark hair was meticulously styled, his jawline sharp, and an almost imperceptible frown creased his brow as he surveyed the damage. For a moment, silence stretched, taut and uncomfortable. Emma felt a flush creep up her neck. Then, his gaze, startlingly direct, met hers. It was not angry, but assessing, dissecting. "No harm done," Dr. Gray said, his voice a low, resonant baritone that held an almost surgical precision. "A minor incision, easily remedied." He even managed a faint, almost imperceptible curve of his lips. Before Emma could offer to clean it, a colleague rushed over, clucking apologies and dabbing at his lapel with a pristine handkerchief. "Dr. Gray, are you quite all right? Ms. Johnson, for heaven's sake," the colleague exclaimed. Emma felt a fresh wave of mortification, but Ethan raised a hand, dismissing the colleague. His eyes were back on Emma, scanning her volunteer badge, then lingering on the medical journals tucked under her arm. "You seem quite engrossed in your studies, Ms. Johnson." It wasn't a question. "I'm trying to get into medical school, Dr. Gray," Emma admitted, feeling suddenly small and clumsy. "Pre-med. Volunteering here is invaluable." His gaze sharpened. And what field calls to you? Emergency medicine, Emma replied without hesitation, a flicker of her true passion breaking through her embarrassment. I want to be where I can make an immediate difference. He held her gaze for a beat longer, a flicker of something unreadable in his glacial eyes. A noble ambition, Dr. Gray finally said. Then, with a curt nod to his colleague, he turned and was gone, leaving behind the faint scent of expensive cologne and an unsettling sense of having been thoroughly scrutinized. Emma spent the rest of her shift replaying the embarrassing encounter, certain she'd made a permanent, negative impression on one of Seattle's most influential figures. So it was with a mixture of disbelief and trepidation that 2 days later, an elegant, embossed card arrived at her apartment, requesting her presence at Dr. Gray's private office. The Gray Institute for Advanced Cardiology was a gleaming testament to power and precision, a stark glass and steel edifice that pierced the perpetually gray Seattle sky. Inside, the opulence was muted, almost minimalist, but every surface gleamed, every piece of art meticulously placed. It was the antithesis of Emma's cramped, life-worn apartment. Ethan Gray's office, on the top floor, offered a panoramic view of Puget Sound, the vast expanse of water, a moody reflection of the heavens. He stood by the window, his back to Emma, silhouetted against the bright expanse. He turned as she entered, still in that impeccably tailored suit, radiating an aura of quiet, formidable authority. "Miss Johnson, thank you for coming." His voice, though polite, offered no room for casual pleasantries. He gestured to a sleek leather chair opposite his equally sleek, uncluttered desk. The desk itself was clear, save for a single tablet glowing softly. "Of course, Dr. Gray, I still apologize about the coffee," Emma said. He waved a dismissive hand. "The dry cleaner handled it. I called you here for a different matter." He leaned forward slightly, his eyes fixed on hers. "I was impressed by your candor, your ambition, and your knowledge of medical essentials. It's rare to find such clarity of purpose at your stage." Emma felt a blush creep up her cheeks. "Thank you," she murmured. "I've taken the liberty of reviewing your academic records, your volunteer history, even a few public records regarding your recent life changes." Emma's breath hitched. Her divorce, her financial struggles. Drive. Gray knew. The privacy invasion was chilling, yet delivered with such professional detachment, it felt almost clinical. "I understand your current situation presents significant barriers to your dreams of medical school," he continued, ignoring her discomfort. "Financial vulnerability, limited resources, the sheer uphill battle of starting over." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. "I am prepared to remove those barriers." Emma frowned, her suspicion rising. "I don't understand." "My proposal is simple," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion, like a well-calibrated machine. "I will provide full tuition for your medical education, at the institution of your choice. A substantial monthly stipend to cover all your living expenses. A fully furnished, luxurious apartment in one of the city's most desirable neighborhoods." He gestured vaguely towards the expansive view, encompassing the very apartment building she'd only ever glimpsed from the street. "And a competitive salary." Emma's mind reeled. This was a fantasy, a cruel joke. "In exchange for what, Dr. Gray?" The words came out sharper than she intended. "What do you want?" He finally allowed himself a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Your complete and undivided attention. You will be my exclusive personal assistant. You will manage my professional and, at times, personal schedule. You will conduct research, accompany me to events, ensure the seamless operation of my life outside of the operating room. My needs are precise, Miss Johnson, and they require someone who is intelligent, adaptable, and utterly discreet." Exclusive assistant? The term hung in the air, vague yet undeniably heavy. It sounded less like a job, more like a claim. The golden cage, already shimmering into view. He tilted his head slightly. You would live a life of comfort, pursue your medical ambitions without a single financial worry, and gain invaluable experience within the elite echelons of modern medicine. In return, you would ensure my world functions without a single ripple. There are no other applicants for this unique position, Ms. Johnson. My offer is extended to you, and only you. The implications were dizzying. A wave of desperation, so deep it felt physical, threatened to pull her under, her dream, within arm's reach, shimmering with an irresistible allure. But beneath the glittering surface of his offer, Emma felt a profound unease, a chill that had nothing to do with the cool precision of his office. Dr. Ethan Gray was offering her everything, but the cost, though unstated, felt impossibly high. Emma left the Gray Institute in a daze, the city lights blurring through the persistent mist. Back in her small, quiet apartment, the stacks of textbooks seemed to mock her. The scent of cheap coffee was suddenly offensive. Dr. Gray's proposal replayed in her mind, a seductive symphony of opportunity and warning. The luxurious apartment, the full funding for medical school, it was everything she had ever yearned for, a lifeline thrown to her at the exact moment she felt she might drown. Yet his cold, calculating assessment of her vulnerability, the chillingly vague, exclusive assistant role, the sheer audacity of his offer, it all screamed of control. He wanted dominion. Not just her time, but her life. She stood by her window, looking out at the endless rain, at the city that now held both her greatest hope and her deepest fear. Her ambition, a ravenous beast, clawed at her, urging her to seize this improbable chance. Her intuition, a quiet voice scarred by past betrayals, whispered caution. The choice loomed, stark and undeniable. To accept was to step into a gilded unknown, to risk her independence for the promise of her future. To refuse was to condemn herself to the slow, arduous grind and perhaps to never truly realize her dream. The glimmer of hope Ethan Gray offered was undeniably bright, but it came with a shadow that felt impossibly long. The decision, she knew, would define her. Chapter 2. The Golden Handcuffs. The rain had stopped, but a leaden sky hung low over Seattle as Emma stared at the signed contract. Her name, Emma Johnson, stark and unfamiliar, beneath the elegant flourish of Dr. Ethan Gray's. Her phone sat on the chipped coffee table, a single unread text from Sarah, a classmate from her pre-med days, about a study group. She'd tried calling Sarah, seeking advice, but the words had caught in her throat. How could she explain this Faustian bargain without sounding insane, or worse, greedy? Temporary. Emma whispered to her empty apartment. The phrase a thin shield against the chill crawling up her spine. Temporary means to an end. My medical career. Ambition, a fire she thought divorce had extinguished, now roared, drowning out the quieter voice of caution. With a deep breath that tasted of both fear and resolve, she sent the acceptance email. 2 days later, the old key to her cramped studio felt like a relic from another life. She stood in the gleaming foyer of her new apartment, 20 stories above the city. A breath-stealing panorama of Puget Sound and the Olympic Mountains spread before her. Marble floors, walls the color of moonlight, furniture that looked too perfect to sit on. The air hummed with a subtle, expensive scent. It was everything she'd ever dreamed of, yet utterly devoid of her own imprint. A gilded cage, she thought, the motif already taking root. This wasn't hers, not truly. It was an extension of Hintace. She ran a hand over a pristine quartz countertop, the surface cool and unyielding. The silence was vast, a luxury she hadn't known she craved, but it also felt like an absence, a space where her own scattered thoughts and desires were swallowed whole. Her first day as Dr. Gray's exclusive assistant began at the hospital, an edifice of steel and glass that dwarfed her old university library. She was given scrubs, a badge and an instruction to observe. In the operating theater, under the blinding surgical lights, Ethan Gray transformed. The polished, almost aloof man from his office dissolved, replaced by a conductor of impossible precision. His hands, gloved in latex, moved with an artistry that defied belief, a dance of scalpel and suture, as he worked on a beating heart. The focused intensity in his eyes was absolute, a chilling brilliance that commanded every person in the room. This was the healer, the lifesaver, and Emma felt a genuine awe. It was easy to forget the unease when faced with such undeniable genius. Back in his administrative suite, her duties were, as promised, innocuous. She organized his impossibly intricate schedule, cross-referenced research papers, and drafted correspondence. He dictated, concise and clear, his expectations unwavering. No detail was too small, no margin for error allowed. Emma found herself thriving on the challenge, her mind, long dulled by the grind of survival, sparking to life. She was learning, absorbing, feeling a sense of purpose that had been missing for years. The days blurred into a demanding, stimulating routine, each task a testament to his exacting standards, each completed task a quiet victory for her. A week later, a silk dress in a deep sapphire arrived at her apartment, accompanied by a note, asterisk, for the Rainier Gala. Dr. Gray will collect you at 7. Asterisk. It was less a suggestion, more an instruction. In the cavernous dressing room of his penthouse suite that evening, Ethan Gray looked at her, his gaze sweeping over the borrowed silk. Elegant, he said, a faint curve to his lips, but perhaps a touch more contemporary. He presented another garment, a sleek, dark dress that shimmered like spilled oil. Try this. It will highlight your resilience. His choice was impeccable, of course, transforming Emma into a creature of sophisticated allure. It felt like a costume. At the gala, a glittering tableau of Seattle's elite, she moved through the room on his arm, a trophy to his discerning eye. He introduced her to senators, tech titans, and hospital board members with a proprietorial charm that made her feel both utterly out of place and intoxicatingly seen. She laughed at the right moments, listened intently, and felt the weight of a gaze that was always on her, subtly guiding, subtly controlling. Later that night, in his vast, hushed study, the city lights a distant hum below, they worked. A stack of patient files, a research proposal for a new surgical technique. The air conditioning whispered, and the only sounds were the soft rustle of papers, the click of a mouse. Ethan leaned back in his leather chair, watching her. His eyes, usually so sharp and analytical, held a different quality now, a deep, unsettling warmth. When Emma handed him a document, their fingers brushed. A jolt, electric and raw, passed between them. He didn't withdraw his hand immediately, his thumb tracing a phantom line on her skin. The silence stretched, thick, with unspoken possibilities. Her breath hitched. She could feel the dangerous pull, a dark current beneath the polished surface, threatening to drag her under. It was more than professional. It was a hungry, palpable tension that left her heart hammering, a thrilling and terrifying premonition of boundaries dissolving. Chapter 3. The Slow Squeeze. The iridescent shimmer of a microscopic blood vessel under the high-powered lens was a symphony to Emma. Weeks had bled into months, each day a relentless cycle of lectures, lab work, and late-night study sessions. Yet for the first time in years, the crushing weight of financial anxiety wasn't suffocating her ambition. Dr. Gray's resources were boundless: private tutors for organic chemistry, access to exclusive medical journals, even a state-of-the-art diagnostic software suite installed on her sleek new laptop. She was excelling, top of her class in several subjects, a testament to her innate intelligence finally unshackled. The promise of her medical dream felt closer, more tangible than ever before. The opulent apartment, once a gilded shell, now felt less alien. She had started to personalize it, albeit cautiously, with a few cherished books and a small, vibrant potted fern on the kitchen counter. Yet the sense of borrowed space lingered, a constant, subtle reminder of the source of her comfort. Emma, Dr. Gray's voice, a smooth baritone, cut through the quiet hum of the smart home system as she stepped out of her study one evening. He stood by the expansive windows, overlooking the glittering tapestry of downtown Seattle, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. "A thought has occurred to me regarding your volunteer commitment at the community clinic." Emma paused, her heart giving a small, unwelcome skip. She loved her Tuesdays at the clinic, the grounding reality of it, the simple act of helping those truly in need. "Oh? I find it invaluable, Doctor. The practical exposure to diverse cases." He turned, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. "Precisely. And yet, your current schedule, with your accelerated coursework and increased responsibilities here, is nothing short of demanding. My vision for your success, Emma, is comprehensive. We must optimize every minute, every resource. Is a few hours of basic triage truly the most efficient use of your time, given the caliber of education you are now receiving?" He didn't tell her to quit, he simply presented it as an objective analysis, an undeniable truth. Emma felt a familiar conflict brew within her. He was right, on paper. Her time was precious. But the clinic was Cunner's asterisk, a small bastion of her old life she still clung to. "It offers a different perspective," she ventured, weakly. His gaze was gentle, persuasive. "And there will be ample opportunities for myriad perspectives as you progress. But for now, focus, unwavering focus on laying the groundwork for the extraordinary surgeon you are destined to become. Perhaps we can consider scaling it back, or pausing it entirely for the current semester." It was a suggestion, a question, but Emma knew it was an order in disguise. To disagree would be to question his judgment, his vision, for her. To seem ungrateful. A silent battle raged and lost. "Of course, Doctor. I'll make arrangements." He nodded, a brief approving curve of his lips. "Excellent. It's for your own benefit, Emma." The next suggestion came with a delivery from Neiman Marcus, a sleek charcoal sheath dress and a sapphire blue evening gown, both meticulously chosen, accompanied by a note from his assistant, asterisk, for upcoming engagements with Dr. Gray. He trusts these will be to your liking. Asterisk Emma, whose wardrobe had previously consisted of sensible separates and reliable scrubs, stared at the labels. The clothes were exquisite, undeniably beautiful, but they felt like a costume. Another layer of the gala, knew Emma, he was molding. She wore them, of course. She had to. Social engagements became a frequent part of her evenings. Galas, charity auctions, exclusive dinners with prominent figures in the medical world. Always at Ethan's side, introduced as his exceptionally talented and promising assistant. She was a beautiful accessory, intelligent and articulate, but still an accessory. The murmurs, the admiring glances were always flirtation. She was merely a reflection of his curated world. One Tuesday, instead of her usual clinic shift, Emma found herself at a sprawling university library, preparing for a group project. "Hey, Emma, didn't think I'd catch you out of Gray's orbit." Emma turned to see Chloe, a classmate from her advanced anatomy lab, a spirited woman with a cascade of fiery red hair and a sharp, observant mind. Chloe often wore faded band t-shirts and carried a perpetually chipped coffee mug. Emma offered a strained smile. "Hi, Chloe. Just grabbing some resources." Chloe's eyes, quick and intelligent, scanned Emma's tailored blouse and perfectly coiffed hair. "You know, you've really leveled up since we started. I barely recognized you at that Rainier dinner last month. All Black Swan chic." Chloe's tone was light, admiring even, but there was an undercurrent of something else. A question. "I mean, you're always with Dr. Gray, aren't you? I just always pictured you more bohemian, Like indie coffee shop, worn-out jeans bohemian. She winked. Not that this isn't working for you. You look like you just stepped out of a magazine. The words, so casually delivered, landed like tiny sharp pebbles. Knife. Out of Gray's orbit. Knife. Always with Dr. Gray. Not that this isn't working for you. It wasn't a critique, but an observation that Emma had been avoiding. Her life wasn't just changing, it was being meticulously redesigned. A seed of unease, long dormant, began to germinate. That night, lying awake in the plush king-sized bed, she longed for a small corner of her old, uncomplicated life. The familiar, slightly burnt coffee from the independent cafe near her old apartment. The quiet solitude of flipping through a real newspaper, not a tablet curated by an algorithm. The next morning she mustered a small surge of courage. "Doctor," she began, as they reviewed his schedule over breakfast in the sleek kitchen. "I was thinking of taking a break this afternoon. Perhaps a walk, and then I'd like to visit a coffee shop I used to frequent. Just for an hour or so on my own." Ethan paused, a spoonful of Greek yogurt midway to his lips. His eyes, usually unreadable, seemed to gleam with a flicker of something Emma couldn't quite decipher. "A coffee shop, Emma? My dear, that's hardly conducive to the focused respite you require. And your personal security details will need advance notice for any excursions outside of our usual routes." He waved a dismissive hand. "Tell you what. I'm scheduled to meet with Senator Thorne later this afternoon. It's a crucial discussion on healthcare reform, and I'd value your perspective, your insights into the potential grassroots impact. You could prepare a brief for me, then join us at the Hawthorne Club. Their Ethiopian Yirgacheffe is unparalleled. We could have a quiet moment there, just the two of us, before Thorne arrives. How does that sound? Far more productive, and certainly more refined than some public establishment." He had offered an alternative, a seemingly generous one, cloaked in concern for her security and her professional development. He hadn't said no, but he had effectively erased her small bid for independence. The coffee shop, her quiet hour, evaporated. Instead, she would be preparing a brief, then joining him at an exclusive club, still within his sphere, still an extension of his agenda. Emma felt a subtle, chilling tremor. The golden cage, she realized, wasn't just beautiful, it was meticulously engineered. And the bars, invisible at first, were slowly, imperceptibly, tightening around her. She was a bird, fed the finest seeds, gifted the widest views, but no longer in control of her own flight. The slow squeeze had begun. Chapter 4. The Price of Passion. The shift had been gradual, like the imperceptible creep of a tide, until one evening Emma found herself drowning in it. It began with late-night discussions in his study, dissecting complex surgical cases or delving into medical philosophy, her mind alight with the sheer intellectual thrill. Then came the shared dinners, the easy laughter, the brush of hands across a shared report. Soon, the space between them seemed to dissolve, not in a rush, but with an inevitability that felt both thrilling and terrifying. Their first kiss had been a lightning strike, a sudden, desperate plunge into a depth Emma hadn't known she craved. She had felt a yearning ignite within her, a hunger that her previous sterile marriage had never touched. Ethan, for all his precision, was a master of sensation. His touch was deliberate, his lips a slow, consuming heat that demanded a response. In his arms, Emma felt seen, desired, adored in a way that stripped away years of insecurity. She melted into the gilded sheets of his penthouse bedroom, a willing participant in the intoxicating current that pulled them together. But even in the throes of passion, the undercurrent of his control remained. He orchestrated their intimacy with the same meticulous care he applied to a cardiac bypass. His gaze, though filled with desire, also held an unnerving intensity, as if he were cataloguing every nuance of her pleasure, every rise and fall of her breath. He spoke in murmurs against her skin, a velvet voice guiding her, coaxing her to surrender, yet he rarely, if ever, truly surrendered himself. His vulnerabilities were an unbreachable wall, his own depths hidden, even as he explored hers. He focused on Emma's release with unwavering precision, a virtuoso performing for a single, grateful audience, but his own emotional landscape remained a fortress. She found herself craving not just his touch, but a glimpse behind the curtain, a moment where the powerful Dr. Gray dissolved into simply Ethan. It never truly came. "You're beautiful, Emma," he'd whisper, tracing the curve of her hip, and a thrill would shoot through her, quickly followed by a tiny, almost imperceptible prick of unease. Was she beautiful to him, or simply beautiful in his possession? The golden cage shimmered even here, in the most intimate of moments, reminding her that this exquisite pleasure, this newfound security, came at a price she hadn't fully comprehended. Weeks bled into a month. Emma's studies soared, her grades impeccable, her future bright. She navigated the intricate tapestry of Ethan's life with a growing ease, her role as assistant now inextricably tangled with her role as his lover. Yet the question of who Emma Johnson was, separate from Dr. Gray, grew more pressing with each passing day. One rainy Seattle evening, the sky a bruised purple beyond the panoramic windows of Ethan's penthouse, they sat, in companionable silence, a classical symphony playing softly from hidden speakers. Emma was curled on the sofa, a medical journal open on her lap, while Ethan, across from her, reviewed digital charts on his tablet. The rain drummed a hypnotic rhythm against the glass, and for a rare moment, peace settled. Suddenly the music on the smart home system faded, replaced by the somber voice of a news anchor. Tragedy struck Interstate 5 this afternoon, as a multi-vehicle pileup involving a semi-truck and several passenger cars has claimed at least 3 lives, including a young mother and her child. Authorities are investigating. Ethan, who had been perfectly still, went rigid. The tablet in his hand clattered, not quite falling, but a harsh sound in the sudden quiet. Emma looked up, startled, to see his face. It was as if a mask had been ripped away. His eyes, usually cool and discerning, were wide, bloodshot, fixed on the muted images of twisted metal flashing across the screen on the far wall. A raw, profound anguish contorted his features, a glimpse of a wound so deep and ancient it made Emma's breath catch. His jaw was clenched so tight, the tendons stood out. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the agony vanished. His hand shot out, striking the control panel on the armrest. The news snapped off, replaced by a blast of the symphony, jarringly loud. He rose abruptly, his movements stiff, almost violent. "Sensationalist garbage," he bit out, his voice sharp, devoid of the usual elegant cadence. He strode to the window, turning his back to her, his shoulders tense beneath the silk of his robe. The relentless pursuit of misery. There's enough of it without them broadcasting it into our homes. Emma said nothing, her heart thrumming. That wasn't annoyance she'd seen. It was grief, pure and unadulterated, a chasm of pain he had quickly, ruthlessly, sealed away. The powerful surgeon, the man of absolute control, had cracked for a fleeting, terrifying moment. A tremor ran through her. What past did he carry that could elicit such a visceral reaction? The next day, the image of Ethan's haunted face still lingered. Emma was studying in the campus library, surrounded by the hushed rustle of pages and the soft tap of keyboards. She was making notes, trying to connect a complex pharmacological pathway, when a shadow fell over her. "Hey, Emma," Chloe whispered, her smile friendly but her brow furrowed. Chloe was a classmate, bright and earnest, with a penchant for brightly colored scrubs and an easy laugh. "Mind if I borrow this textbook for a minute?" "Of course," Emma replied, sliding the heavy tome across the polished table. Chloe took the book, then hesitated. Her gaze swept over Emma, lingering. "You know, you're doing amazing in neurophysiology. Dr. Henderson practically sang your praises." "Thanks," Emma said, a small flush of pride warming her cheeks. Chloe leaned closer, her voice dropping. "But I've barely seen you around lately, outside of lectures or with Gray. You didn't even make it to the study group last week. Are you okay?" Emma stiffened, a defensive retort already forming. "I'm fine, Chloe, just busy. His schedule is intense." "I know," Chloe said softly, her blue eyes filled with genuine concern. "Everyone talks about it, how you're basically his shadow. It's just, you seem different, Em. You used to joke about escaping for a coffee alone, or unwinding with that true crime podcast. Now, it feels like your entire life is Dr. Gray's life. Even the way you dress, your hair." She gestured vaguely at Emma's impeccably styled bun, and the tailored blouse Ethan had subtly suggested for her. "It's like you're starring in his perfectly curated world." The words struck Emma with the force of a physical blow. She felt a cold dread seep into her veins. Chloe meant well, but she had articulated the very fear Emma had been pushing down. The exquisite apartment, the designer clothes that felt like a uniform, the constant presence by Ethan's side, the unparalleled education. It was all a golden cage, growing smaller by the day. She was excelling, yes, but at what cost to herself? Her true crime podcasts were forgotten, her simple joys replaced by Ethan's sophisticated preferences. Her friends from before the divorce, tenuous connections already, had faded away. Emma managed a tight smile. "I'm just adapting to a new routine, Chloe. It's a huge opportunity." Chloe nodded slowly, unconvinced. "I get it. But don't forget to breathe, Em. And don't forget you." She squeezed Emma's arm gently before heading off, leaving Emma alone in the quiet library, the hum of fluorescent lights suddenly oppressive. Chloe's words resonated with the echo of Ethan's sudden pain, both stirring a potent cocktail of desire and disquiet within Emma. She was falling for him. She knew it. The passion was undeniable, the intellectual connection exhilarating. Yet the price of that passion felt increasingly high. Her own reflection was blurring, slowly being subsumed by his. The mysterious, wounded surgeon who saved lives with such precision, yet carefully guarded his own emotional heart, had opened a window into his pain, and then slammed it shut. And Emma, caught in the radiant glow of his controlled universe, was starting to feel a desperate need to understand what secrets lay hidden behind his perfected facade, before she completely lost herself within it. Chapter 5. The Cracks in the Facade. Midpoint. The scent of old leather and polished mahogany hung heavy in Dr. Gray's private study, a space Emma usually treated with the reverence of a cathedral. He had, with a casual wave of his hand early in their arrangement, declared it off-limits for her usual administrative tasks, deeming it too personal for anything but his solitary contemplation. Yet this morning, a forgotten sheaf of patient notes, vital for an upcoming review, had been spotted on his desk, and Ethan, already in his morning rounds, had reluctantly granted Emma access with a stern admonition to touch nothing but the papers. The room was a testament to Ethan Gray's exacting nature, shelves lined with first editions and medical journals, their spines perfectly aligned, a large dark wood desk utterly devoid of clutter save for the stray file Emma sought. A grand unlit fireplace dominated one wall, above it a large abstract painting in muted grays and deep blues that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. Emma found the notes quickly, tucked beneath a heavy silver paperweight. But as she reached for them, her gaze snagged on a barely perceptible seam in the side panel of the desk. Curiosity, a serpent she had learned to keep caged, coiled in her gut. She remembered Chloe's words from weeks ago, about losing herself, about the golden cage feeling more real than ever. Perhaps there was something beyond the polished surface. Her fingers, almost of their own volition, traced the faint line. With a soft click, a narrow panel slid inward, revealing a small, dark recess. Her breath hitched, Inside lay a single, aged photograph, face down. Her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Touch nothing but the papers. But this felt like touching the core of Ethan Gray. She hesitated for only a second, then gently lifted the photo. It was a candid shot, slightly faded at the edges, capturing a moment of pure joy. A woman with a cascade of dark, wavy hair, strikingly beautiful and vibrant, laughed up at the camera, her arm around a small, smiling boy with Ethan's dark eyes. Their smiles were uninhibited, their connection palpable, radiating warmth. They looked like a family. They looked like his asterisk family. Emma's comfortable illusion, meticulously built over months of shared luxury and passionate nights, splintered and fell away like shards of glass. This wasn't a quirk of personality, not mere eccentricity, nor even the refined demands of a brilliant mind. This was a man with a hidden past, a life he had deliberately buried, and a control that stemmed from a deeper, darker wellspring. The easy smiles, the comforting reassurances, the subtle manipulations, they all coalesced into a chilling mosaic of calculated deception. She replaced the photo, sliding the panel shut with a soft click, her movements mechanical. The weight of the discovery pressed down on her, leaving her breathless. The quiet hum of the smart home system, usually a comforting backdrop to their opulent life, now felt like the low thrum of a surveillance state. The golden cage, once merely uncomfortable, now felt like a very real, very solid prison. The photograph, even unseen, burned behind her eyes. It transformed her simmering unease into a simmering anger, a sudden, desperate urge to test the strength of her bars. Later that afternoon, Ethan's voice, smooth as velvet, slid through her smart speaker, requesting her presence in the living room. "Emma, darling," he began, without preamble. "I've just received word of a critical donor meeting this evening. It's late notice, but quite important. I've arranged for us to dine with the Montgomerys at 8. I trust your schedule is clear." His tone held no hint of question, only an expectation of compliance. He was watching her from the archway, impeccably dressed, a faint, proprietary smile playing on his lips. The Seattle rain had finally broken, and a shaft of pale, watery sunlight cut across the polished floor, highlighting the dust motes dancing in the air, and illuminating the stark control in his gaze. "Actually, Ethan," Emma said, her voice betraying a tremor she desperately tried to suppress, "I have plans tonight. A casual dinner with Chloe. We made them last week." The air in the room seemed to cool by several degrees. Ethan's smile didn't waver, but a subtle hardening entered his eyes. "Chloe," he mused, the name a soft dismissal. "A charming girl, but surely you understand the importance of this meeting. The Montgomerys are substantial patrons. Your presence as my principal assistant is invaluable." "I understand," Emma pressed, trying to keep her tone level. "But I also committed to Chloe. It's not a work event, it's a casual dinner." Ethan took a slow step towards her, his gaze unwavering, dissecting. "Emma," he began, his voice still gentle but edged with steel, "let's be pragmatic. You are pursuing an incredibly demanding career. Every moment, every connection, should ideally serve that ambition. I provide you with unparalleled resources, your education, this residence, the access to my network. Resources that, I might add, are predicated on your dedication to our shared objectives. A spontaneous dinner with a classmate, however pleasant, does not quite align with the trajectory we have so carefully charted for you." He paused, letting his words hang in the air, a silent but potent reminder of her financial dependence. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He simply laid out the truth of their arrangement, cold and unvarnished. "The Montgomerys await," he concluded, his smile returning, a mask of unwavering civility that only made the underlying menace more profound. "I will inform my driver. You have an hour to prepare." The silence that followed stretched, taut and suffocating. Emma felt the full, crushing weight of his power, a tangible force that pressed her into submission. He hadn't needed to say a single explicit threat. The subtext was louder than any shout. Your dreams, your comfort, your entire world exist at my discretion. She looked at him, truly saw him for the first time beyond the veneer of benefactor and lover. He was a master of control, not just of his emotions, but of her entire existence. The golden cage now felt less like a metaphor and more like a physical reality, its bars invisible but unbreakable. The photograph in his desk, the vibrant woman and child, whispered of a past tragedy, now entwined with her own impending captivity. A chilling realization settled deep in her bones. She was not just trapped, she was inextricably bound to a man whose shadows ran deeper than she could have ever imagined. And she knew, with a certainty that both terrified and galvanized her, that she had to find out why. Chapter 6. The Dark Revelation. The perpetual mist of Seattle seemed to press closer to Emma's window, blurring the sharp edges of the cityscape into an impressionistic canvas of muted grays and greens. It had been 4 days since she'd discovered the hidden photograph, 4 days of restless nights and days spent dissecting every memory of Ethan, every subtle command, every lingering gaze. The image of the smiling woman and the bright-eyed boy had embedded itself in her mind, a ghost haunting the gilded halls of her new life. She found Chloe in the campus library, hunched over a laptop, surrounded by a fortress of medical textbooks. "Hey," Emma said, her voice a little too casual. "Could you do me a favor? I'm thinking of doing a research project, hypothetical, for a sociology elective, on how prominent public figures cope with immense personal loss. Specifically, I'm interested in how trauma manifests into controlling behaviors." Chloe, ever sharp, lifted an eyebrow. "Sounds specific. Any specific figures in mind or just general research?" Emma forced a laugh. "Just general. But if you happen to come across any high-profile medical professionals in the area, say a decade or so ago, who experienced a truly devastating family tragedy, that'd be gold. I'm thinking like a sudden, catastrophic loss. Something that would have been front-page news, then faded. I've tried the usual archives, but I'm terrible with keyword searches on old news sites." Chloe, always keen to prove her digital prowess, grinned. "Consider it done. Give me a couple of hours." True to her word, Chloe sent a string of links later that afternoon. Emma opened them in the privacy of her opulent apartment, the silence amplified by the plush carpets and the hum of central air. The first article, dated nearly a decade prior, carried a stark headline. "Tragedy strikes Gray family. Esteemed surgeon loses wife, son in horrific crash." The words blurred and then sharpened, each one a hammer blow. The article detailed a rainy autumn evening, a distracted driver, a collision on the I-5. Ethan Gray's wife, Ilara, and their 5-year-old son, Leo, had been killed instantly. There were photos, a radiant Ilara, her smile wide and genuine, holding a cherubic Leo. Then, a more recent photo of Ethan, somber and hollow-eyed at the funeral, his surgical mask replaced by a veil of profound grief. Emma clicked through more links. News reports chronicled the outpouring of public sympathy, the hospital's official statement, the memorial service. One particularly harrowing piece detailed how Ethan had withdrawn completely for months, only to re-emerge, colder, more driven, pouring himself into his work with an almost terrifying intensity. He had funded a children's trauma clinic in Leo's name, a stark reminder of his lost boy. The luxury of her apartment, once a symbol of her ambition realized, now felt like a mausoleum. The silk sheets, the designer clothes hanging pristine in the walk-in closet, the exquisite art on the walls, they all shimmered with a macabre irony. She was living in the monument to a man's broken heart, a heart that had calcified into an unyielding need for order, for control. A wave of profound, aching sympathy washed over her. He had lost everything. The thought alone was enough to make her stomach churn. To lose a wife, a child, the foundation of his world had been ripped away, violently, without warning. It was a trauma beyond imagining. He, the healer, had been irrevocably wounded, leaving a gaping void that no amount of surgical precision could ever repair. But as the initial shock subsided, a chilling clarity emerged. His grief hadn't been processed, it had been transmuted. It had twisted into a pathological need to manage his pain by managing everything. If he could control the variables, if he could orchestrate every detail, every interaction, every person asterisk in his orbit, then perhaps he could prevent another such catastrophic loss. Perhaps he could escape the chaos that had shattered his life. His immaculate apartment, his precise schedule, his curated appearance, his absolute dominion over her life, it all clicked into place, a meticulously constructed defense mechanism. He wasn't just offering her a future, he was attempting to reconstruct a perfect, controllable world, and she was the most vital, the most precious piece on his chessboard. She was his new Ilara, his new Leo, a life he could meticulously shape and protect, never again allowing fate to snatch it away. Emma stared at her reflection in the full-length mirror, a tall, slender woman dressed in the elegant, neutral tones Ethan preferred. She looked beautiful, poised, successful, but in her eyes she saw not herself, but a reflection of his expectation. She was a carefully polished facet of his world, a bird in a golden cage, albeit one constructed from profound, unbearable grief. The initial sympathy curdled into a cold dread. This wasn't love, not truly. It was a desperate, all-consuming form of control, an emotional sadism born of unimaginable trauma, where he meticulously managed his pain by holding absolute dominion over her. He saved lives in the operating theater, but in his personal life, he was a puppet master, orchestrating existence to avoid another crushing blow. Her future, her education, her very identity, all were tethered to his unhealed wounds. Could she live like this? Could she accept a life of gilded comfort, knowing it was the price of her soul? She thought of her burning ambition, her desire to heal, her past self, bruised but independent, fighting for every inch of ground. That woman had not vanished. She had merely been buried under layers of silk and luxury. A fierce, unyielding resolve hardened within her. The understanding of his pain didn't absolve him of his control, nor did it lessen the cost to her. She had climbed into this cage, enticed by the promise of her dreams, but she could not, would not, remain imprisoned. The revelation was dark, devastating, but it also brought an undeniable light, the stark clarity that she could not continue living this curated life. She would fight. No matter the sacrifice, she would reclaim her freedom. Chapter 7. The Battle for Self. The muted hum of the city, a familiar nightly lullaby from her lavish penthouse, felt like a distant echo as Emma stepped into Dr. Gray's study. The rich scent of aged leather and paper filled the air, a testament to his curated existence. He sat at his sprawling mahogany desk, illuminated by the precise glow of a task lamp, reviewing surgical notes. The sight was, as always, a tableau of controlled brilliance. Tonight Emma felt no awe, only a brittle resolve. "Ethan," she began, her voice steady, though a tremor vibrated just beneath her ribcage. He looked up, his gaze keen, a hint of expectation in his eyes, accustomed to her presence being a seamless extension of his evening. "Emma, just the person. I've refined the research parameters for the xenotransplantation project. Your input would be invaluable." She held up a hand, a small, unprecedented gesture that immediately brought his words to a halt. The air thickened. "We need to talk, not about work." His brow furrowed, a faint crease of annoyance appearing. He closed the file with a soft thud, giving her his full, unnerving attention. "Then what is it, Emma? You seem troubled." "I know about Ilara and Leo," she said, the names hanging in the quiet room like shattered glass. The carefully constructed perfection of Dr. Gray's face fractured. The analytical gaze hardened, then flickered with something akin to raw animal shock. His posture stiffened, every muscle in his formidable frame tensing. The silence that followed was deafening, charged with a sudden, dangerous energy. When he spoke, his voice was a low, dangerous growl she'd never heard before. "What did you say? Your wife, Alara. Your son, Leo. The accident. 10 years ago." Emma met his stare directly, though her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "I understand now, Ethan. The control. The meticulous order. The need to orchestrate every single detail around you, including me." His eyes, usually pools of icy clarity, blazed with a mix of fury and pain. He rose slowly, the movement deliberate, like a predator circling. "You presume to understand? You pry into my past, into my deepest grief, and then claim to understand?" He scoffed, a bitter, dismissive sound. "You know nothing." "I know enough to see that you've built a gilded cage, Ethan," she pressed on, the words tumbling out now, laced with both sorrow and steel. "And I know I've been living in it. I appreciate everything you've given me, the opportunities, the education, the sheer luxury. But the price is my soul, my autonomy, myself." He took a step towards her, his expression a mask of chilling control. "Autonomy? Self? These are the luxuries of those who don't understand the true cost of their ambition. I offered you everything, Emma, a life you could only dream of. I took a struggling, heartbroken woman and elevated her to a position of unparalleled advantage. Do you truly believe you could achieve this without me? You'd throw all of this away for some abstract notion of freedom." His voice dropped, imbued with a seductive, dangerous persuasion. "You're throwing away your future." For a fleeting second, a flicker of profound anguish crossed his face, a raw vulnerability that spoke of a decade of unhealed wounds. It was the face of a man utterly broken, who saw control as his only means of survival. But just as quickly, the wall slammed back into place, harder than before, his hands balled into fists at his sides. Emma felt the old fear, the pull of the golden cage, tempting her to retreat, to apologize. But the image of Alara and Leo, the tragedy that had twisted this brilliant man, solidified her resolve. She was not a replacement, not a pawn to soothe his pain. She was Emma. "My future isn't yours to dictate, Ethan," she said, her voice finding its true strength. "My dreams are my own. I will earn my medical degree on my own merit for myself, not as a curated extension of your grief or your control." His jaw clenched, a muscle working furiously. "Then you truly are a fool." "Perhaps," she conceded, a new kind of peace settling over her. "But I will be a free one." The confrontation ended not with a bang, but with a chilling, definitive silence. Ethan merely stared at her, his eyes cold, devoid of the warmth that had sometimes surfaced between them. It was a stare of dismissal, of utter severing. He had lost control, and in his world, that was unforgivable. Emma turned and walked out, leaving the scent of leather and his controlled fury behind. The next morning, before the city had fully roused, Emma was in a downtown branch of her old bank, opening a new account. The process felt both terrifying and exhilarating. The numbers were insignificant compared to the zeros in Ethan's accounts, but the balance was hers. Later that day, from a coffee shop, she spent hours scrolling through online rental listings, modest studios, shared apartments, starkly different from the panoramic views of her current residence. Each small, practical step, severing a thread of the intricate web Ethan had spun around her, brought a surge of fear, mixed with a potent, defiant joy. Her finger hovered over the "cancel subscription" button for the exclusive car service Ethan had insisted on, the one that whisked her everywhere. With a deep breath, she pressed it. The golden threads were beginning to unravel, one by one. She was stepping out of the shadow, into the uncertain, exhilarating light of her own making. The battle for self had truly begun. Chapter 8. Freedom's Cost and Redemption's Promise. The dawn, usually a muted affair in Seattle, broke with a stark, uncompromising clarity the morning Emma Johnson left. She moved through the lavish penthouse apartment with a purpose she hadn't felt in months. The quiet click of her own heels against polished marble, the only sound in the vast, silent space. This opulent prison, once a symbol of her dreams coming true, now felt like a mausoleum. She had packed 2 worn suitcases, one with her medical textbooks, the other with a handful of clothes that were truly chose card asterisk, not gifts from Ethan, not chosen for her by his meticulous eye. Her old worn jeans, a faded university hoodie, the sensible flats she used to wear. Everything else, the designer gowns, the luxurious skincare, the custom-made jewelry, remained, pristine and untouched, monuments to a life she no longer recognized as her own. She left her key on the polished mahogany dining table, next to a brief handwritten note. "Ethan, I wish you peace. I need my freedom. Emma." There was no anger in the words, only a quiet, unshakable resolve. Stepping out of the building, she didn't look back. The morning air, cool and sharp, invigorated her lungs in a way the temperature-controlled air of the penthouse never could. She hailed a taxi, her destination a small, brick apartment building in a less fashionable but vibrant part of the city. The contrast was visceral. The sterile, sky-high silence traded for the rumble of traffic, the distant shouts of early risers, the scent of damp earth and brewing coffee. Her new apartment was a single room, cozy rather than grand, with a small kitchenette and a window overlooking a bustling street. It was scuffed, lived in and gloriously hers. She unpacked her books first, arranging them on a second-hand shelf. They weren't just instruments of her ambition anymore, they were a testament to her tenacity. She was working again, too, a part-time job as a medical assistant in a community clinic, the very kind of place Ethan had subtly discouraged her from volunteering at. The pay was modest, the hours long, but every dollar she earned for her rent, her food, her tuition, felt like a victory. A week later, Chloe met her for coffee at a small, independent shop near Emma's new place. "Seriously, Emma," Chloe said, beaming, "you look lighter, like a cloud has lifted." Emma smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. "I am. It's hard, don't get me wrong. Money's tight, I'm juggling work and studies, but it's my asterisk hard. And knowing I'm doing this on my own terms, that's worth everything." Chloe reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "I'm so incredibly proud of you. That took guts. Real guts." Emma recounted the steps she was taking, applying for every scholarship under the sun, researching student loans, meticulously budgeting. "This education," she said, gesturing to her backpack containing her books, "it's not just about becoming a doctor anymore. It's about proving to myself that I can build something truly solid, truly independent." She felt the weight of the golden cage lifting with every decision she made for herself. Meanwhile, in the sterile silence of his penthouse, Dr. Ethan Gray moved like a ghost. His apartment, usually a beacon of minimalist perfection, felt colder, larger, more desolate than ever. The note on the dining table remained, its concise words echoing in the vast emptiness. He picked up a framed photograph from his bedside table, not the faded one Emma had found, but a more recent, professional portrait of himself, handsome and unsmiling. He set it down. Then, his gaze drifted to a hidden compartment behind a discreet panel, the one Emma had discovered. He opened it, his fingers tracing the outline of the old, faded photograph of Alara and Leo. His son's bright, toothy grin. His wife's eyes, full of life and the love he hadn't been able to protect. He stood there for a long time, the rain beginning to fall outside, mirroring the storm brewing within him. The meticulous order he had so carefully constructed around himself was still intact, but the centerpiece, the one he had tried to control and contain, was gone. Emma's absence was a gaping wound, tearing through the carefully crafted facade of his control. He hadn't just lost a companion, He had lost his system. A tremor of profound loneliness, deep and raw, shook him. For the first time in years, there was no one to manage, no life to direct but his own shattered one. The path to redemption, if it existed for him, would be solitary and arduous, beginning now in the isolating silence of his gilded cage. Weeks turned into months. Emma's new life was demanding, but filled with an exhilarating sense of purpose. She spent her days at the clinic, her evenings poring over textbooks, fueled by cheap coffee and an unyielding will. She wasn't living in luxury, but she was living authentically. The rain still fell in Seattle, but Emma found herself noticing the moments when the light broke through, illuminating the city in a new, hopeful glow. She knew the road ahead was long, fraught with challenges, but the fear that had once tethered her was replaced by a quiet, unwavering confidence. She had faced her deepest fears, walked away from glittering chains, and found something far more precious than comfort or prestige, her own unbroken self. She was a healer, yes, but first she had healed herself, understanding that true freedom, true success, was forged in the crucible of her own strength, her own choices, and the unwavering promise of her own hard-won future.
If you enjoyed this audiobook, a like and subscription to Soundscape Books would mean a lot.